You're listening to M-PACT Bound, the official podcast for the M-PACT Trade Show, brought to you by the Modern Welding Company of Owensboro.
Well, welcome to M-PACT Bound, the podcast of the Midwest Petroleum and Convenience Trade Show coming to Indianapolis April 14th through 16th. And I'm your host, Brian Clark. And in the studio with us today, we have Stephen Griffin, who is partner and co-founder of Downstream Energy Group, longtime exhibitor at M-PACT, and a very much a veteran C-store operator turned M&A advisor. He speaks from experience, not theory. And we are so glad to have him in the studio with us today. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Brian. Glad to be here.
Well, we are so excited to be talking with you today about your session that's going to be on Thursday, April 16th at M-PACT at 9 a.m. It's called Overcoming Valuation Concerns, Maximizing Your C-Store Chain's Worth. And Steve is definitely the man to do this session. He doesn't just advise convenience store owners on their most important business decisions, but he's lived every chapter of the stories that they're about to tell as they go to sell their store. So today, Steve and his co-founder, they lead a team of former operators and fuel executives and industry veterans who advise on mid-market C-store transactions. And his company, Downstream Energy Properties, focuses on smaller operators and single location businesses. So, Steve, the issue when we're talking about maximizing C-store chain, too many convenience store owners walk away from a sale without getting what their business is truly worth, not because the market wasn't there, but because they weren't prepared. And in your session, you're going to give mid-size operators a very clear, practical framework for understanding how their business is valued, what moves the needle before going to market, and how to time a sale to their advantage. And so this conversation, I think, is one that most owners wish they'd had 2 years before they sold, right?
That's right. That's right.
So let's before we jump into the session itself, let's kind of wind the cameras back a little bit. Steve, tell us a little bit about your background. You literally grew up inside the petroleum industry. Can you take us back to where the Griffin family story begins?
My mother and father, Reuben and Virginia Griffin, started the business about 1956. They started Griffin Petroleum. That was in Jonesboro, Arkansas. So I grew up in that business, and it was a service station business. Tires, batteries, and accessories. We're all familiar with the old two-bay service stations with gas pumps and full service. That's what I grew up in as a young man. And that evolved into a wholesale fuel supply business and continued to grow over time. But my mom and dad were the pioneers in this business, starting us a long time ago.
And certainly you then also went on from that background before you came back to the family business. You had a career in banking. How did that shape the way you think about the C-store industry?
Well, mom and dad were successful in the petroleum business, and that enabled them to expand into other things. They both thought I was better off going into banking as to petroleum at the time, and their thoughts learning the capital markets, et cetera. So I started in investment banking. I spent a period of time in investment banking from Little Rock, Arkansas to Memphis, Tennessee, to ultimately Chicago. And the combination of a investment banking background with a commercial banking background, learning capital markets, how money flows, how money's put together. I spent 8 years there before I came forward and went our family business.
And then, so you got involved in Griffin Express. You built that to 70 locations, 30 restaurants, and then you went through a sale yourself, right? Well, and what did that experience
That's correct.
teach you? Yeah, what did that teach you that you couldn't have learned any other way?
Well, I thought I understood how the exit would take place. And I did understand the process coming from the investment banking, commercial banking business. I did know it. But I made the assumption with my background, I knew more than I really knew. So my mistake was I did not choose an industry specific advisor in that vertical. I've been a generalist working in the investment banking business, dealing with, the company may make washing machines that we're selling, or it could be a bank that's selling assets. But this business is specific. It has a defined vertical, a set of processes. So I should have chosen the right advisor, and I didn't, and I'm sure it cost our family money.
So obviously that fast forward a little bit to what you're doing now with Downstream Energy Group, and you're advising folks on that process. So when an owner sits down with you for the first time and you ask what they think their business is worth, how often are they right?
Rarely are they accurate. Most owners are meaningfully off because they haven't calculated or know what true adjusted cash flow or four-wall EBITDA, earnings before income taxes, depreciation, and amortization even means. So Financials need normalization. So seller provided numbers almost never reflect seller adjustments, add backs, non-recurring items, pro forma, cash flow, etc. They use the wrong benchmarks. And in doing so, the valuations are often based on anecdotes or hearsay, what they think they know, not actual market comps. And the deal multiples based on real-time data are the key. So limited visibility into real-time valuation methodology. Owners aren't tracking how buyers, especially the strategics, how they price their deals. What are the synergies? What about conversion capex and current cost of capital? They don't know those sorts of things, even though they may think they do. They don't. So our role is to reset expectations with real data. So we bring clean financials, industry-specific valuation frameworks, and context on how active buyers think about price.
So, what are some of the most common assumptions that owners are making that actually hurt their negotiating position?
Well, they come in assuming, oftentimes, I would say there are a few, but one of the very important ones is they assume long-term fuel supply agreements add value. And sellers often think a new branded supply deal is a positive, but buyers see that as a limitation. They want flexibility. They want to run their own fuel procurement strategy. They don't want the seller to figure that out for them. So they overestimate the value of leasehold sites often with short terms. And that's a mistake. Owners assume buyers can just negotiate a new lease, but buyers want long-term control. They want a base term on a lease and they want options in place before closing. Another point, believing their financials are sale ready. Many assume their books are clean, their trends are clear, but buyers typically find normalization issues, missing add backs, or inconsistent site level reporting. Assuming buyers value that, it's a mistake. So sellers often focus on aesthetics. They see the aesthetics, they think, well, that's important, or small investments they may have made or sweat equity they have in the deal. It's not the case. Buyers focus on cash flow. They focus on controllability and rateability of products. So that's critical. Critical. Lastly, I would say timing. Timing, they think it doesn't matter, but owners underestimate how market conditions, competition, CapEx, the cycles affecting pricing and leverage, they don't understand. Buyers punish you if you've got deferred CapEx. A good example, you're not keeping the units up, you're not keeping the fascia, the building, the canopy, and the pumps where they need to be. Well, they use that and they punish you at the buying table, keeping deferred CapEx up, maintaining those facilities in top-notch quality or in a competitive manner, help you in preparing to exit.
Do you think that's really mostly a family business problem, or do operators of all sizes run into those kind of blind spots in their evaluation?
No, I don't think it's just a family issue. It happens across the board. I mean, operators of all sizes, I'm including sophisticated multi chains, they miss key drivers oftentimes. They just do. So many don't stay current. That's what it boils down to, Brian. They're not current on market dynamics. So larger operators aren't always tracking real time multiples or buyer behavior and capital cost shifts. Things change. So those blind spots tend to scale with the business. So smaller operators may overlook financial normalization, as I've mentioned. Larger groups underestimate capex. So those are complexities. So every operator benefits from staying market ready, regardless of their size.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what actually moves the needle on value. Let's say if an operator came to you today and said, I'm thinking about selling in the next 2 years, what should I be doing now? And what's the first thing you'd tell them?
Well, you've got to be prepared. Get your financial house in order. That's the number one thing. I mean, I open that way. Get your financial house in order. Clean, organized, consistent financials. That's number one, most important issue. With clear site level trends, they're the single biggest driver in these deals. Next, I'd you know, maintain and document steady performance. Buyers don't want to see this. They don't want to see those aberrations and changes. So steady performance and documenting is critical. So protect gallons. Make sure your pricing program's up to date. Inside sales, cash flow. Buyers pay premiums for stability and upward trends. So be aware of that. So stay up on the CapEx. We mentioned that in the previous question that you had. You've got to keep CapEx up. Deferred maintenance or upgrades cost you at the end of the day. And this also signals to them that you are a strong steward and it reduces the buyer coming in and discounting you. So, and a biggest thing I run into, Brian, these people go out and make long-term commitments. Don't do that. Don't set up long-term commitments. Don't sign restrictive fuel contracts or supply agreements, short-term leases. That limits the buyer's flexibility and it depresses value. So think like a seller early. That's what I want to teach. Position the business for maximum control. So leases, real estate, contracts, buyers can underwrite clearly and cleanly and aggressively. That helps you move it forward.
Keep it nimble, huh?
Keep it nimble. That's a good way of looking at it. Stay fresh, stay current, stay on top of the business day in and day out.
Well, you mentioned timing. Let's talk a little bit about timing the market. How does an owner know when it's the right time, not just for the market, but for them personally? I'm sure that's a tough question for anybody looking to sell.
Look, it is. It's a big issue. Let's talk about, I've got 3 or 4 points here that I think are critical regarding timing. So
hmm
when the writing is on the wall, so owners often feel it's this pressure somehow, some way, and it's family, whatever, and they know it, and they often don't admit it, but operations are beginning to get harder. Performance plateaus. They're not going anywhere, particularly with the business. This is when the writing is kind of on the wall, Brian. They got to be aware of it. Now, next, we run into this constantly. No succession path. If there's no family member or internal leadership ready to take over, it becomes a natural inflection point. And you have to elevate and you have to move forward and evaluate, is this time for the sale? And then last 2 points that I think are critical for us is competition is outpacing them. This is a monster issue. So larger players with scale, with technology, with capital are increasingly creating a more difficult platform for them to operate on. So independence, it gets very hard to compete in some of those markets. So that competition, if they're being outpaced competitively, that's a signal, that's a sign, watch for it. And then lastly, I'd say the business needs more than the owner wants to give. So look, I mean, let's face it, maybe it's age. They just don't have what it takes anymore. So when the required investment or time or energy outweighs the desire to keep pushing, which this requires in this business every day, well, it's usually the right moment. And that's the time to move forward.
So who's buying mid-size C-store chains right now? And really, does it matter to the owner who the buyer is?
Well, I'd say it does matter to them. And it's a wide range of buyers that are very active today. So you have, let's talk about them, the industry consolidators. You have the large regional chains. You have the oil
Mm-hmm.
companies, major branded refiners, for example, wholesale fuel distributors, private equities out there now in groups, real estate investors with operating partners are all buying mid-sized portfolios. So there's a lot. So yes, it absolutely matters who the buyer is because different buyers bring different operating models, valuation approaches, and transition philosophies. So legacy and stewardship, comes a problem for us all the time. They're worried about their legacy and who's buying the company. So some buyers like to preserve the brand, their family brand, and they want to keep it intact. Everybody knows this was my dad or my grandfather that started this. So the culture, sellers can often deeply care about who's going to run their stores post-closing. They get very emotional. This is a difficult thing for us to manage. So the buyer type can impact the value and the deal structure. So strategics may pay for the synergies because they are a synergistic company. They're looking for oil, the movement of it. Wholesale groups can value controlling gallons, and private equity may say, oh, we want to stretch for more growth. We want more buyers. And the real estate people come in and they may treat it completely different. They're looking at a property mix of values. So buyer matters, and there are a wide variety of buyers out there today.
Well, Steve Griffin with Downstream Energy Group, your session at M-PACT is called Overcoming Valuation Concerns, Maximizing Your C-Store Chain's Worth. And if you've been listening all along, I think the answer should be very clear to this next question. But who should make sure they're in the room for this one?
Look, Brian, if you've got 5 to 75 stores, if you've got 4 to 100 stores, you need to be in this meeting. You need to hear what we're sharing. This comes from repetition year after year after year, working with families, working with smaller corporations, working with those that are planning to exit. It takes time to be prepared. And keep in mind, Brian, the sole objective is at the end of the day, if you're choosing to sell for whatever reason, you're doing one thing for shareholders. You're trying to extract and close, extracting maximum sale value. That's your
Mm.
that's your mandate. That's your goal. That's what
Mhm.
our company and what our team focuses on.
So, for those that attend your session, what's the one thing that you want someone to walk out of your session knowing that they didn't walk in with?
I would say, my core message, what are we trying to do? Well, so too many store owners walk away from a sale without getting what their business is truly worth. It's not because the market wasn't there. And it's because they were ill prepared. And that's what a message I want to get across. So my session gives mid-size operators a clear, practical framework for understanding how their business is valued, what moves the needle before going to market, and how time is on your side or against you. This is a conversation most owners should have 2 years before they sold their company. This is not something you want to. I want to get together and go sell the company next month. It's preparation. And with the preparation, you get to the goal, and that's extracting maximum exit value. So I want to get across in that meeting to everyone that look, there's much to this. This is not a painless, slow little process. I mean, this takes 8 to 12 months and sometimes more from soup to nuts, start to finish. And it takes an advisor, a competent, capable advisor. Don't attempt this on your own. Don't do it. Bring on board a competent, capable advisor. And I want them to see that in this meeting. I want them to understand it. Whoever you choose, make sure they're industry specific to this business. They can guide you from beginning to end to doing what? Extracting maximum sales value and bringing you to a successful close.
So, Steve, you all have been a longtime exhibitor at Impact, and you'll be there again this year. And booth 307, for those who are interested, you offer complimentary business valuations at Downstream Energy Groups. Why and what do owners typically learn when they go through that process for the first time?
Well, thanks, Brian. Yes, our team will be there in our booth, and we're there to help marketers along the way. So stop by and visit if you'd like. But to answer your question, more importantly, because most owners have never seen true market based valuation, they've never seen it. So our process shows them how buyers actually price assets based on precedent deals that are out there. Return on investment models are used, real transaction data. They've never seen that. So once they see that, it pulls the blinders off. And now they're seeing a true world, transactional world in the business in which they own.
Well, great stuff, Steve. I think it's going to be fascinating for folks that are encouraged and enthused to attend your workshop here at Impact. And that's going to be Thursday, April 16th at 9 a.m. Join Steve for this high value insight packed session that's going to take you from uncertainty about your business's worth to clarity, confidence, and a clear action plan. And you've obviously got the decades of personal operating experience, but you've also got that real world valuation framework for C-store chain owners. I think it's going to be a fascinating session for folks. Of course, if they want more information about Downstream Energy Group, they can visit your website, DEG Advisors.
That is correct, Brian. I mean, I want people to go there and take a look at what we do. If you want to have a free valuation, well, fill out the form. Our professionals will call you, and it helps you plan. It's free, no obligation. We're not asking for any contract or anything at all. We've been doing this for years. We know it helps the market. It helps the industry. So what it will do, Brian, is it'll reset expectations with real facts, not anecdotes. We want the anecdotes and the fluff out of this business. We want them to know truly what their business is worth and where they can expect it to trade. So we're here to help that if we can.
Stay nimble, plan ahead, and give Steve a call. That's what I'm hearing.
That's it, Brian. I agree.
Thank you for your time today, Steve. Steve Griffin with Downstream Energy Group. Don't miss his session on Thursday, April 16th at 9 a.m. But you can only hear him if you come to Impact and be registered for the show. And you can do that by visiting www.m-pact.org. You've been listening to Impact Bound, the podcast for the Midwest Petroleum and Convenience Trade Show. Steve, thanks again for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you in Indianapolis.
You are welcome. Thank you, Brian. We appreciate it.
For more information, visit m-pact.org.